Welcome to Shut Up and Sit. I'm Yedda Stancil, a consciousness coach and consultant. I'm on a mission to bring mindfulness to the modern world. Each week, we will offer ancient healing practices, real-world examples, and the latest research in neurobiology and behavior change into fun conversation that invites you to wake up your highest self. Now, let's go shut up and sit. All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm here to talk to you today about the link is what you think. Probably one of my favorite topics. And today you've just got me again. As I mentioned, sometimes we have guests and sometimes we have co-hosts, and sometimes you're just going to get me just kind of dropping the heavy. Last episode, I dropped it on you with the whole 10 steps to getting real, shared a little bit about my journey into the health and wellness field, really, with a lot of personal loss and learning how to wake up from some really crappy, what I call just really shitty health behaviors. Really goes way beyond just, my own physical well-being, but, our health impacts our brain, our neurology, our neurobiology. Everything works better when we feel better. And so for me, my wake-up call was in that loss and in learning how to let go of the drinking, the addictions, the drugs, the numbing, really. I then was left sitting there and asking myself, well, what do I do? Great. Now I've had this kind of wake up call that I'm not going to live forever. And if I keep doing what I'm doing, I might end up in the same place that my grandfather, my father, my brother all ended up. And, they were young, 54, 20, and 43. I didn't want to have that happen to me. And so the next step in the journey for me, and what happens for a lot of us in this journey, is something gets our attention, whether it's through a breakdown or through our own self-discovery, or we were raised maybe with some great health or behavioral mechanisms that we want to do more of. Whatever it is, wherever you are on that behavioral change journey, thoughts are not talked about in this personal development space as much as I think that we need to begin to talk about them. I know there's this entire field of positive psychology, and I ran into those people. I hung out with them for a little while, which was like, just think your way into a better feeling place. And maybe you guys can do that, but here's the deal. Did you know in any given day, 5% of your day is operated and run by the conscious mind? Meaning, power of positive thinking is great, but 5% of the day for most Americans is where we have the ability to consciously think our way into a new, better feeling place. Because when we get stressed, our unconscious, right, our subconscious mind kicks in and runs the show for us and pulls all these scripts out and these patterns and these behaviors to make life a little bit easier. And so we do have to talk about thoughts, but we have to talk about them in a different way. So a big fancy word that I never knew about, but I learned in this shutting up and sitting down journey, was a word called metacognition. If you don't know what that is, it basically means thinking about thinking. And my sister and my friends will tell you, yep, that sounds like Yedda. That's about what she does. I love to think about thinking. I've always been that way. I just never really knew that. And so I've been cultivating this thinking about thinking and pondering and curiosity for most of my life. And so here I'm in this moment in my early 20s, and I've lost these people that I've loved. I just start learning. I go to school. I start just kind of, literally, I replace the addiction of drugs and alcohol with health, wellness, exercise, good nutrition, a ton of knowledge. I started reading books prolifically. I started turning rocks over and asking anyone and everyone, how do you get healthy? How do you stay healthy? And I was straight up addicted and obsessed. I did not ever want another phone call like the 3 I had gotten from the people who I had lost that I would never see again. And I'll tell you, there is not a day that goes by that I don't think about those people. There isn't a moment that goes by that I don't think about my dad. And he never got to see, me get married. He never got to see his grandson. I mean, there was a lot of life that he didn't get to live. But I really have to kind of think about this though for a moment. And I do spend a lot of time thinking about this thought. If my dad had not died, I don't know that I would have hit the brick wall and woken up and decided to do something different. So why I'm here talking to you guys today, why I do what I do, why I get up every moment of every single day and share this information, not just about your physical fitness, your mental, emotional, spiritual, psychological, financial, metaphysical. I mean, I'm in all of it as an integrative development practitioner. I do it because I feel obligated to help people become the best version of themselves, because my dad's death was not in vain. It saved my life. And I want to use that for a greater good, for a power, for a purpose beyond anything I could ever imagine. So I speak with conviction. I speak with passion, because to me, that's what this is all about. I mean, I could do all kinds of things other than probably some type of financial analyst or analytical job. That's just not my shtick. I do this because I care, but I think about these thoughts all the time because I want people to know. I feel like sometimes I'm walking around in the world and the trance that the majority of the world is in, I just want to shake people and be like, wake up, wake the fuck up. You don't have to live like this. This trance can be something that you can wake up from. So with all of this, I just feel like you guys, I want you to know that about me. I feel obligated to get on this microphone, to get on the videos, to go out in person, to write this book, to do all these things to help people shut up and sit down and go within to find themselves, because I don't want the loss of my father. I don't want the loss of my loved ones to be something that other people experience. And God forbid, if you do experience some type of loss, I hope it's not in vain for you and for your family members, that you do something good in memory and in honor of them. So I look in the mirror every day. I look a lot like my dad, and I see my dad. I see my dad in me, and I see the joy that he had as a human being. And I carry that forward in every conversation I have. And when I look at every single human being that I interact with, I see not only my dad, I see myself in those other people. I see you. Even though I may not see you face to face right now, I see each and every human being when I share this information. And it's our humanity and the thought process. So back to thoughts. So why do we care about thoughts in this whole process? Because if we don't wake up and realize what we're thinking, we're not going to be able to unravel what we're doing. A lot of people in the behavioral change space will talk about behaviors. Just modify your behavior, change your behavior. I say that's like holding a beach ball underwater. So our brain, 5% of the day, when it's not stressed out, it can let the beach ball just float on the water and be good and be happy and be positive. But when we get triggered or stressed, this part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, goes offline. And when it goes offline, this subconscious mind comes in with all these scripts and patterns and behaviors that says, here's what you need to do to run the show and to operate and survive today. We don't have the capacity to write new scripts, to think new thoughts, because we're using so much energy to survive. We can't thrive. And so I started asking myself, well, wait a minute. If thoughts matter, and if we're in this space of helping people learn new ways of showing up, don't we have to rewire our thoughts? Don't I have to think different thoughts? Yes, I do need to think different thoughts, but it's not from a forced place of only think positive thoughts. Our negative thoughts, our suffering, our waking up moments, I never want to forget. I don't want to rewrite the story of the experience of what happened when I lost my dad, because it motivates me and inspires me to do different and to do better today. I can't think my way out of grief. I don't want to just be positive. Was there a positive aspect to what came from my dad's loss? Absolutely. Was it one of the darkest, deepest moments of despair in my life? Absolutely. I can't think my way out of that. And there's this whole combination around metacognition and thoughts that when we start looking at human patterned behavior, we have to start to stay awake and aware to go back and look at not the behavior, not the emotion, but the thought. Thoughts generate feelings. Feelings drive behavior. So I thought to myself, well, if that's the way it works, and I go back to the thought, how do I slow down the frame, if you will? In narrative coaching, we call this rewind, rewrite, and respond with a thought that then creates a feeling that then drives a behavior that's actually good for me. And so the more I started digging into this, and I got real deep in this rabbit hole for a couple of years in my breakdown, I started to learn how to be aware of what I was thinking, how to ask myself what thought would create what feeling, which would then drive what health behavior. Not always Pollyanna, positivity was around it. It was just the freedom and space to just go, so the link is really what we think. What we think is going to create what we feel, and what we feel is going to inspire us to take action to do something. If I think the world is against me, then I feel negative, then I go out and do things that are going to communicate that thought and that feeling. Well, okay, so now I realize, I can't just go out into the world and become a healthy person without knowing this equation, if you will. So I started asking myself, what's thoughts like? Well, I had to wake up. That was my shut up and sit. Remember in the first episode, I talked about going to meet with Gina. I sat in a chair in a room with a woman in silence for an hour every other week, just to cultivate the capacity to wake up and realize what was going on in my head. What was I thinking? That war that JJ and I were talking about on another episode, that war that was inside my head, I had to clean up that clutter. I had a shitload of thoughts going on in my head. And I would be willing to bet right now, if you're listening or if you're watching and you just pause. So I'm going to ask you right now, just pause. If you're driving, just keep listening. Or if you're doing anything important, just ask the question and pause for a minute. So for the next few seconds, make a note. How many thoughts are you having? And I'm going to tell you, ready, set, go. All right, that's 10 seconds. How many thoughts did you have? Griffin, I don't know about you, you're behind the camera, but I had at least 6 that I was consciously aware of in 10 seconds. One was, shit, I hope the listeners don't turn the show off and think something happened. 2 was, wow, my watch starts to get dark after 5 seconds. 3 was, I have no idea what everybody's thinking on the other end of what I'm saying. 4 was, somebody just walked by. Do you see what I mean? In 10 seconds. So we've got to start to wake up and be aware of, first of all, what are you thinking? And we have over 60,000 thoughts a day. The majority of those thoughts are regurgitated. They're just different versions of the same shit. We got so much crap floating around in our head that we've forgotten that the mind is not in control of us. We are in control of it. And it just takes us and it takes us and it takes us. And so thoughts aren't the enemy. I want to be really clear about this. People think that, we need to become immune to our mental chatter. We got to get rid of the voice of the critic, that monkey mind that we talk a lot about in mindfulness. It is something we need to address. But the whole point of shutting up and sitting down is not to stop the thinking. Do you guys hear me? You're not stopping the thinking. You're simply taking a step back and you're actually becoming aware of, what the fuck am I thinking right now? Oh, look at me thinking this and then thinking this and then thinking this. I just want you all to start to cultivate the capacity to shut up and sit down and become aware of what you're thinking. Your freedom lies not in stopping the thoughts, but in first becoming aware of them. As you become aware of what you're thinking, and a lot of times with clients, I play the I am aware game. You might want to try it tonight at dinner. Just be quiet and just look around and just in your mind, I'm aware of the picture on the wall. I'm aware of the plant on the table. I'm aware of my beautiful spouse on the other side of the table. I'm aware of this. I'm aware of that. Just start cultivating the capacity to be aware and then start to cultivate the capacity on the inside. I'm aware I'm having a thought. I'm really worried what's going to happen at work tomorrow. I'm aware I'm having another thought. Wonder what dessert is. I'm aware I'm thinking a lot of random crazy shit, which by the way, most of us are. If we could put on the main screen, on a movie screen for the world to see our thoughts every day, we would, I don't know about you, I would go hide somewhere. I would be like, oh my God, I can't believe the world is seeing all the crap just floating through my brain. So the link is what you think is about, and shut up and sit is about, not stopping. Just simply becoming aware of, what am I thinking? So when you learn to be mindful, really become mindful, what you do is you learn to be aware of what you're thinking. That awareness cultivates this ability that you realize right in between each thought, there's just a millisecond. So let's play this game again. I'm going to give you 5 seconds of silence. See if you can notice between one thought and the next, just an ever so quick, just hesitation. Ready? Go. So how was that? It's almost as simple as that little space that happens in between the inhale and the exhale of the breath. If you couldn't find it, it's cool. It took me a while. Once you find, oh, this thought ended, and here comes the next thought. It's just that quick as the breath. Oh, there comes the next thought. What happens in mindfulness, and what I love about shutting up and sitting down, is we're cultivating the ability to slow the thoughts down. Oh, here comes a thought. Did you know wherever you place your attention, you can slow things down? Attention is our most valuable resource. We think it's money. It's attention. If we put attention on something, we can actually slow it down to the point where we almost can make it stable and still. So we put our attention on our thoughts in Shut Up and Sit, so we can help you realize we don't get you to stop it all in the beginning. We just get you to become aware of it. If you can figure out what you're aware of, you can choose a different thought in that gap. The gap between the thought is where all the freedom lies. And so in mindfulness and Shut Up and Sit, we cultivate the gap between the thoughts so that it gets a little bit longer and a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And maybe the next time I give you 10 seconds, maybe your numbers drop by half and you go, I only had 1 or 2 thoughts, Yedda. And the thought was totally different, or it was the same thought. It just didn't come with such a frenetic, crazy, chaotic pace as they usually do. So that's really what Shut Up and Sit means, is we shut up and we sit down and we go within, we turn our attention inside of ourselves, and we pay attention on purpose without judgment to what's going on in here. And when we do that, we can cultivate the ability to go take that out into the world and work with other people with those same types of ways of showing up. It's a really big ask and I hear people say this all the time. Oh, the world needs to be a more loving, kind place. Great. Then cultivate loving kindness inside of yourself, because when you find it here, you can't not give something that you have. You easily give to others what you're cultivating inside of yourself. So the exciting piece about the link is what you think is really, honestly, I could probably spend another hour talking to you guys about how this works in our brain. I've always been somebody that's cultivated this skill. And when you say, well, how is that possible, Yedda? You know, if I told you the story of my childhood about 10 years ago, I would have played it with a victim. I would have had a big old victim violin about how shitty it was. Were there components that weren't fun? Absolutely. I look back now though, and I realize the wounds that happened, the things that happened to me in my childhood actually are the very thing that I now use in my wisdom to help others do this work. And so before we go, I'll tell you a quick story, and it's in my book in chapter 1 in more detail. But, my mom, as you guys heard, my mom and my dad, my biological father didn't make it. They got divorced. My mom got remarried when I was 5, and I met my new dad. I did call him dad. He legally adopted me. And so met my dad when I was 5, and then my mom and my dad had my sister. And so, life was a little bit different. I always felt like I was an outlier, an outcast. This wasn't really my dad, even though today I would tell you he is my dad. He raised me. I do love him. But at the age of 5, I didn't have the capacity to understand what that meant. And I had a lot of wounding, and I had a lot of what we now call in psychology fatherless daughter issues. So guys that have dated me have figured that out, but that's a whole nother talk show, Griffin. We'll get there later. But I had to learn a lot of things. And so as a kid though, my mom and dad had my sister. I always felt like I was an outlier. And so for me, I spent a lot of time on the outside looking in. I feel like even in my own nuclear family, because of the fact that I would go spend weekends with my real dad and then come home, and I had these 2 lives I was living. One with a biker dad hanging out literally in the garages, putting motorcycles together, watching people smoke cigarettes and drink beer and look at naked women all over the garage wall. And the other, with my mom and my dad and my sister, and kind of playing house in this really, nice little neighborhood. And so I always felt like I was observing. And so even when I was in school, my mom in her infinite wisdom decided at one point in our life that she was going to become Jehovah Witness. And I asked her today, I'm like, Mom, why did you ever do that? And no offense to the Jehovah Witness people that are listening, although I don't think I attract Jehovah Witness people anymore. But I asked her, I'm like, why did you do that? And she goes, oh, honey, it was so great. it didn't require any holidays, and we didn't have any money. And when her and my dad divorced, my stepdad, she definitely didn't have any money. And so she was Jehovah Witness because she honestly said it just made a lot of sense. They didn't have holidays. It really, we weren't raised in a religious way. She certainly wasn't. And so for me, being Jehovah Witness as a kid in school, you guys, every morning for the Pledge Allegiance to the flag, Yedda, you can't participate, go out in the hall. Because Jehovah Witness people, they don't pledge their allegiance to anything other than, I guess, God. You can also, Yedda, here's the deal. We got a holiday party. You can't participate, go out in the hall. And so my entire childhood, middle school, elementary school, any holiday party, and then every single time there was a Pledge Allegiance to the flag, I had to go sit out in the hall. So at home, I felt like I was always kind of an outlier, an observer. I didn't really belong. And then at school, I certainly didn't feel like I belonged. I sat out in the hall all the time, and I would peer around the corner and I'd watch all the holiday parties, gluing the cotton balls on Santa's beard, making peanut brittle, dyeing Easter eggs. So one year I decided, I got put out in the hall. All the kids were dyeing Easter eggs, but they had left all their raw eggs in their backpacks that they brought to hard boil and then decorate. And so I just leaned up and I smashed the bottom of every single backpack and I broke all the kids' eggs. Now, you might be thinking, oh my God, that's just awful, Yedda. I was in a lot of pain as a little kid sitting out in the hallway thinking everybody's having fun and I'm not included. I don't get to belong in the party. And so I got sent to the principal's office. Yes, they called in the child psychologist. Yeah, there was a lot of conversations. Anyway, get the book if you want to read the rest of the story. What I realized though, spending my life as a student in the hall, and then what I spent my home life like, I now help people do this work of shutting up and sitting down and figuring out who they are, what they believe. And by the way, a belief is just a thought you keep thinking until you don't even realize you're thinking it anymore. And so all this unconscious, subconscious work, consciousness, silence, stillness, health, wellness, metacognition, all this stuff we're going to be talking about on this show and that you're going to be learning about. I cultivated the capacity to stay in the observer seat, to not get lost in the dogma, to not get lost in the belief system, to not get lost in the joining or the belonging. But you know what? I don't get lost in it now. I welcome everyone's point of view. I welcome everyone's belief system. There is no judgment. I literally sit now in the seat of awareness, but I realized when I started to shut up and sit down, I've been doing this my whole life. Right? I told you guys this before. Silence was a version of punishment for me. It is for a lot of people. But I realized being an observer and watching people and being really keenly aware of their behavior and what they were doing and why they weren't doing it helped me to become a truth seeker and a truth teller. And I can go into groups, organizations, situations, relationships, people, places, and things and see what other people aren't seeing. I can also say the things people aren't saying. And so what I want to leave you all with today is there's a lot of really great stuff to learn here about who you are. It's an unlimited minefield of joy. And yes, I got fortunate enough to cultivate a lot of this. I didn't even know it as a kid, sitting out in the hall, having conversations with myself, talking to what I would call source, knowing that I had cultivated something inside of myself then as a small child in my wounding, now bringing it out into the wisdom of silence and stillness in the modern world, I think is amazing. And so I share that story for really two reasons. One, to let you know wherever you are, whatever has happened in your life up until this point, it has a purpose, and that purpose can be used to serve something greater than yourself. I don't play the victim violin anymore. What happened in the past happened. What happens next is directly as a result of what I choose to think, and thoughts are important in this equation. So our next episode, I wish I could keep going, but there's just so much I want to tell you. Our next episode is going to kind of build on this thinking process. So what you know is thoughts are mental units of energy. When you think something to the point you don't even realize you think it anymore, you start to lay a track of a belief system in your mind, in your body, in your being, which then helps you to drive your human behaviors, the patterns out into the world. But you know, what's really cool about this, I had a lot of saints and sages, but a lot of great leaders. And I call them kind of wizards along the way that helped me to dive deeper and to figure this out, to help me to put this whole shut up and sit, this kind of method of how to get get into the moment and really bring out who you are into reality. One of them you're going to hear from on our next episode. His name is Philip Davidson, and he is going to be talking about the next piece that I teach in this method, which is the 4 components of being human. I had no idea, you guys. I was wildly unique, but also that all of us are unique in these 4 components, which makes us the same. So make sure you tune in next time to hear about the 4 components of being human. Philip's going to be here, so there's going to be somebody sitting next to me, and we're going to help you understand your human story, your wounding, every aspect of your 4 components of being human that brought you to this moment right here, right now, might not have been under your control. But I love what Philip says. He says, but what we choose to do next is in our control. That's the empowerment. That's the freedom that we're going to cultivate together. I can't wait until you get back next time and we're here with Philip. So until then, be aware of your thoughts. Make sure you find some silence and stillness in the day, and just turn that narrative of shut up and sit. Turn it from a punishment into permission to find that inner space to connect back to who you are. Until next time, this has been Yedda. Take care.
May you know goodness. May you know peace. May you know contentment. May you be